What's up, guys? Welcome back to the No Fun League, to the YouTube channel. This is my first video since September. We're going to talk about the Giants yet again because, as y'all can see, I'm a Giants fan. This season has been an abomination in a series of abominable seasons, of very bad seasons outside of 2022 and 2016. The last decade of being a Giants fan has been absolutely horrific and downright just not fun and depressing if you emotionally care about your team like most of us do. There's a plague surrounding that team right now. They cannot get a single head coaching hire right. They can't get a single GM hire right. Most of the personnel decisions that they're making are not the right ones, outside of few. And, we've churned through Jerry Reese, Dave Gettleman, Joe Shane now. We've gone through so many different head coaches. We've gone through 5 head coaches in the last 10 years as a franchise. And quite frankly, if fans had any power, if the NFL had any power, or if there was any outside being that can control NFL owners and grade them on their jobs, John Mara would have been forced to sell this team a long time ago, and definitely after this season. He has done an awful job, and honestly, he is a very bad owner. He took over the team in 2005. That's when Wellington Mara passed away, his father. And since then, yes, the Giants have won 2 Super Bowls. Those Super Bowls were built on the backs of the people that the previous ownership hired. Wellington Mara hired Ernie Accorsi and Tom Coughlin. Ernie Accorsi is the guy that got Eli Manning, Osi Umenyiora, Justin Tuck, Michael Strahan, the pillars that made the Giants good in the 2000s. However, since John Mara took over, and better yet, since 2013, once the Ernie Accorsi players started getting older, this team has done nothing right. The 2 draft picks that they nailed out of the park, Odell Beckham Jr. and Saquon Barkley, they're not on the team anymore. Now, Odell, he kept getting hurt. Honestly, getting out of that contract and not having him that full time, fine. However, the way it was handled, paying him that much money, taking that much dead cap, everything surrounding that, awful. Saquon Barkley, I am fully on the side that one should not pay a running back when their team sucks. And Saquon Barkley on this team probably wouldn't put up much better numbers than Tyrone Tracy did, and he would take a lot more physical punishment. I am personally very happy that he is on a good team. I wish it wasn't in the division, but I'm very happy for him. But at the same time, you're letting good talent walk away. The Pro Bowl rosters came out today. Xavier McKinney, former Giant. Saquon Barkley, former Giant. Only one Giant made the Pro Bowl. And we keep letting good players walk away. Julian Love is a great football player for the Seattle Seahawks. A phenomenal football player. Phenomenal locker room guy. And all of it, like I said, comes down to John Mara. And it's because they rely too much on past successes. They're like, oh, we won 4 Super Bowls. We won 2 since 2000. Look how good we are as a team. We're one of the oldest franchises in the NFL, just like the Steelers. And he's said multiple times that he wants continuity like the Pittsburgh Steelers. Well, you can't have that when you hire dipshits and when you let your family members run rampant around the organization. And that is probably my biggest issue with Giants ownership, is the culture of nepotism that they've built. Just 2 egregious examples. Tim McDonald is the director of player personnel. He is John Mara's nephew, the grandson of Wellington Mara. He's been with the organization in high-level roles for the last decade. Chris Mara, the brother of John Mara, is the senior personnel executive. So these 2 people are in charge, or not in charge, but they contribute heavily to personnel decisions. And if they weren't related in direct relations to Giants ownership, they would have been fired a long time ago because nothing has gone right on the personnel side of things. They need to clear the front office, but obviously John Mara is not going to fire his brother. And unlike other organizations where we sometimes see a few Nepo hires on the business side of things for a franchise, this is very heavily in the football franchise side of things. And unlike the Dallas Cowboys where Stephen Jones is being groomed or things like that, it's different when they're actually, A, they're competent, and B, ownership is from the jump, heavily involved. Now, we saw it with the Detroit Lions where previous ownership was not the greatest, but since Sheila Ford Hamp took over, they have been extremely, extremely, extremely great in letting Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell do their thing and not meddling. But the Giants, on the other hand, they love to meddle. Ownership is directly involved. Ownership's family is involved. Since 2013, the New York Giants are 70, 124, and 1, with one playoff win and 2 winning seasons in the last 11 seasons. That is despicable. That is downright awful. No team should be that shitty for that long and still not figure it out. Like, the Lions, yes, they suck. They went 0-16. They still had winning seasons. They still had good seasons. The Giants haven't won the division since 2013. They haven't won their division since 2013. It is awful what has happened to this franchise, and John Mara is directly responsible for it. But once again, we can't give her to ownership, and while they deserve to be called out for it, they deserve to be humiliated in the media for it, we can't do anything. They're going to keep their jobs. He's going to keep the team. One other story, Talking Giants, which is a great podcast. You all should check them out. They made a video, Bobby Skinner made a video saying that Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll should probably be fired. And Giants PR called them about it. They're literally trying to go after people's First Amendment rights so that we don't have to talk, so they don't have to listen to how shitty their team is and how shitty they are at their jobs. It is downright despicable. It is childish. It is petty, and kind of explains why this franchise is where it is. But like I said, ownership can't really change. Chris Mara and Tim McDonald are not going to go anywhere. We're stuck with them until they die. There's other ways that this franchise can get fixed, and there's decisions that ownership can make right now that can help lead us into a better future. I will say the one encouraging thing with our last hires for head coach and GM were that it was the first time that the Giants didn't hire like a connection or someone that had worked in the past or someone that was already there in a very long time. Ernie Accorsi was working under George Young. Jerry Reese was working under Ernie Accorsi. Dave Gettleman had been with the Giants before. Joe Schoen was like a brand new hire. And I think Joe Schoen has done a lot to modernize the way that the Giants go about things. Analytics, like revitalizing the building itself, getting computers and stuff in there, because Dave Gettleman didn't believe in technology for some reason. But all of this does not excuse the jobs that Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen have done, because they haven't done great jobs either. They were given more latitude than any Giants, GM and head coach in a really long time. And they have not made the most of it because they've made bad personnel errors as well. So we're going to start with Joe Schoen first. He's had 24 draft picks since he got here, 11 top 3 picks. And of that, he's only produced 6 meaningful starters. Kayvon Thibodeau, Wan'Dale Robinson, Micah McFadden from the 2022 draft class. And with someone like Kayvon Thibodeau, he's been very up and down since he got here. Wan'Dale Robinson has injury issues, and he's a tiny slot receiver. Like, there's a limit to how important that archetype can be for your team. And then Michael McFadden has emerged as of late, but it's not like he's a world beater either. And then the other 3 players that he drafted that are really good, Malik Neighbors, Andrew Phillips, and Tyrone Tracy from this year's draft class. And we don't know if they'll be consistent. Now, Malik Neighbors, Tyrone Tracy, really good. Corners, a little hard. They also drafted Tyler Nubin at safety, who had some really good moments this season, but I wouldn't say he's an overall hit just yet. They've also had some very big misses in the top 3 rounds. Evan Neal, Josh Ezeudu, Cardale Flott, Deontay Banks, Jalen Hyatt. Deontay Banks had a decent rookie season, completely fell off this season, got benched multiple times. Jalen Hyatt barely played this season. They couldn't figure out a role for him after they drafted him in the top 3 rounds. Evan Neal, nothing to be said. Josh Ezeudu, nothing to be said. Cordell Flott, Like, he hasn't been good by any stretch of the imagination either. So, when you only hit on 25% of your draft picks in 3 years, that is a pretty fucking big indictment on how bad you are as a drafter. And that is probably the biggest thing hurting Joe Schoen's chances of keeping this job, is that he, unfortunately, is not good at drafting players. Whether it's the process, whether it's questions that they're not asking or things that they're not seeing, or whether it's just, like, meddling from guys like Chris Mara and Tim McDonald. Not good at drafting whatsoever. And then when you look at overall personnel decisions, letting Tyrod Taylor walk after last season was an awful mistake. They paid him. They paid Drew Lock a similar amount of money that Tyrod Taylor got. Could have just kept Tyrod Taylor. He wins you a couple games, and there's no conversation about whether Shane and Daboll are keeping the jobs because he wins more games than this team did. No clear backup plan whatsoever in 3 seasons for Andrew Thomas when he inevitably gets hurt or misses some time. Like, this season, it was a little bit better, but last season, they literally had to sign Justin Pugh off the couch to play offensive line. It was that bad. Then, I will give him credit for things like Jermaine Illuminor, Bobby Okereke. Those are really good free agent signings. They panned out really well. Even the Darren Waller trade, that's a very low-risk, high-reward trade. You have an extra third-round pick. You give it up for a guy that was very talented at the time. You work the contract in a way that it's beneficial to your team. But it didn't work out, and that's okay because you have to try stuff like that. He also got really good value for Kadarius Toney, who has done jack shit in the NFL besides beating the Eagles in the Super Bowl. The Brian Burge trade, I still think, phenomenal. And then the biggest thing that he's going to get judged for is giving Daniel Jones $160 million, or signing him to that contract, which is really like a 2-year, $75 million contract. As we saw, they cut him early and did not take advantage of the cap savings that they could have because he asked for it. And say what you will about everybody involved with the Giants, they are stand-up people. Saquon Barkley walking, as I said earlier, like, that makes sense for this franchise. And while it hurts, and while national media, Eagles fans, Eagles media, all of that has been extremely annoying this season, it did not make sense to pay running back $12 million when your team is this bad. But overall, I don't think that Joe Schoen has done a good enough job where we trust him to draft the next franchise quarterback. I trust Brian Daboll to coach the next franchise quarterback, but I don't trust Joe Schoen to draft him or draft the pieces that are needed to fix this franchise and fix this team. Brian Daboll, 18-31-1, one playoff win in his 3 seasons. The team has appeared unprepared. So many alignment issues. Malik Neighbors having to be told where to go by Darius Slayton all the time. Drops. Defensive backs getting penalized for the same things again and again and again. It's just like shows a lack of preparation and accountability. He is a player's coach. The players love him. The players fight for him, as we saw against the Colts. They don't give up like they did on Joe Judge or Pat Shurmur in the past. But it's just like we can't keep having these same issues again and again and again. On top of that, I think he's pretty impatient when it comes to play calling, when it comes to strategy, things like that. If something doesn't work once, they go away from it very quickly. Him yelling at the players on the sideline, I don't mind. I actually think it's a good thing, at least hold them accountable in the moment. The biggest issue with him is I don't think any coordinator will want to work for the New York Giants while he's head coach. He's already run through Wink Martindale, Thomas McGahee, or whatever his name is, was a special teams coordinator who he hired after a 5-minute phone call because he was already with the team under Joe Judge, and they kept him, which is an awful decision because he was bad at his job. Mike Kafka was basically forced to stay here with the way that they reworked his contract. He didn't want to be here. He took away his play call and gave it back, took it away, things of that nature. Shane Bowen was not their first choice defensive coordinator for this season, and it showed because Shane Bowen is not very good at his job. He should be fired immediately as well. Just like we're not going to attract high-level coaching talent while Brian Daboll is here because I don't think people want to work for him, and he's not the easiest person to work with. On top of that, besides Andre Patterson at defensive line, who really revitalized Dexter Lawrence and put him in the spot where he could be an absolute beast, no players have seen like a huge jump in overall talent or overall ability since this coaching staff got here. And that is also an indictment because aside from strategy, play calling, winning games, you're also supposed to develop these guys. And we're not doing that. Deonte Banks had a great first season. You're supposed to develop him, put him in a scheme where it works, and it did not, regressed mightily this season. And as an offensive coordinator, as a guy that's supposed to be offensive genius, this offense only scored over 30 points 3 times in 3 years. One of them was twice, it was against the Colts. And I think that says more about Gus Bradley than it says about our offense. But that's for the Colts to figure out. They have their own issues going on. All of this to say, what they should do from here and where this franchise should go this offseason, I think that you can't fire Shane and keep Daboll, which if you were going just about the job that they've done, that's what would happen, because he has overperformed 2 seasons in a row with bad rosters, Brian Daboll. This year, not so much. You also can't fire Brian Daboll and keep Joe Shane, because he hasn't done a good enough job to earn that, and B, I'm of the opinion that you got to keep your coach and GM on the same timeline to make sure that everything is cohesive, that they work together, that they get along together, and that they have a collective vision moving forward with their team. The biggest issue for the New York Giants, they don't have a vision. Good teams have a vision. Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell, when they took over the Lions, they had a vision of what they wanted that team to be, and we can see that now. Kevin O'Connell and Kwefi Adofo-Mensah, I hope that's how you pronounce his name, when they took over the Vikings, they had a vision. You can see that now. The Kansas City Chiefs are the prime example. They had a vision. Dan Quinn and Adam Peters in Washington, they had a vision. The Giants, among other franchises, don't have a vision. They are just meandering around the abyss. And to fix that, you have to clean house yet again, get rid of everybody, and you have to bring in new staff and have them run straight. So I am of the opinion that you have to fire both Joe Shane and Brian Daboll. And I also think part of this is because there's so many good candidates available coaching-wise and GM-wise right now that this is a good market to be in to get someone. Because while there are issues that will, maybe high-level people might be a little apprehensive to come here, it's still the New York Giants. You still have really good players defensively. You have Malik Nabers, Tyrone Tracy, Andrew Thomas on offense. You got Bobby Okereke, Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeau, Brian Burns on defense, with guys like Andrew Phillips and Tyler Nubin showing promise. And I think that along with the New York media market and the profile that gets you for anything that you do in your future, if you do a good job, will help these people. GM candidates, people that I personally would really like, Ian Cunningham, who is the Bears assistant GM, previously with the Ravens and Eagles, probably the 2 best organizations outside of the Chiefs in the NFL right now when it comes to front offices. And even with the Bears, he was hired when Ryan Poles was hired. He's his assistant GM. They have the trade from number 1 to the Panthers was phenomenal. The way that they built out this team this year was phenomenal. It didn't go according to plan now. Obviously, coaches have been fired. I don't think it's roster construction that's the issue outside of offensive line, which has a lot of young pieces and is developing. So you kind of had to bank on the offensive line struggling a little bit this season. But I think Ian Cunningham is a great choice. I think also Ray Agnew, the Lions assistant GM previously with the Rams, is a really good choice to start tapping into the Lions brain trust and, having a team that's physical, if that's the identity, a little bit of aggressiveness as well, coming from both the way that the Lions have built their roster and how the Rams built their roster to win a Super Bowl. And then some out-of-the-box candidates, Jim Nagy, who is the Senior Bowl director. I think he would be an interesting guy to look at and interview at least. I believe that the Jets are interviewing him. Louis Riddick interviewed for the Giants when they hired Dave Gettleman. Yes, he works for ESPN, doesn't really have a lot of front office experience, but once again, interesting voice to look at. And then Thomas Dimitroff, who built the Falcons team that went to the Super Bowl. I believe he is doing a bit of consulting work and started his own analytics company for football. But another cool dude to look at for GM candidates. And then obviously you have guys like Mike Bergonzi, who's the Chiefs assistant GM, who somehow hasn't gotten a GM job yet. So I think those are some really, really, really interesting guys to look at. And then on the coaching side, guys that I would particularly really want, obviously Ben Johnson, Bobby Slowick, Joe Brady, if you want an offensive-minded guy. Me personally, I kind of want a guy that would be the CEO, not handle play calling, hire the right people, and hire and focus solely on game management when it comes to game time, Mike Vrabel would be my number one choice to be the Giants head coach because he wouldn't put up with the shit from anybody. He would build a culture that is accountable, and he would get the most out of his players and still be a player's coach because his players definitely love playing for him in Tennessee. I think Mike Vrabel would be a phenomenal guy to hire. I think Pete Carroll deserves a look. Jesse Minter from the LA Chargers, their defensive coordinator. I think that would be a good young coaching hire, kind of like a Mike McDonald mold. And then Brian Flores, also the Giants interviewed him a lot, went pretty far in the interview process with him last time. I think he deserves a look as well for the job that he has done building the Minnesota Vikings defense. And then after figuring out what to do at GM and head coach, the most important roster decision that the Giants have to make is quarterback, because Daniel Jones isn't here anymore. Tommy DeVito isn't the guy. Drew Lock is not the guy. I see two options. They can either draft Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, or and what I think is the better choice, you sign a stopgap free agent, a Justin Fields, Jameis Winston, Tyrod Taylor. I think Justin Fields shows the most promise. If you keep Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, Justin Fields should be the first choice because I think Brian Daboll and Justin Fields would fashion a very good offense together. Jameis Winston is just hilarious to watch play football. He's going to throw a bunch of picks and he's going to do dumb shit, but it'll be funny. And him chucking it to Malik Neighbors 50 times a game would be entertaining football to watch, which we really haven't had as Giants fans. And then you draft best player available after you sign that stopgap free agent. You don't force a quarterback this year. You don't repeat a 2019 mistake where it was a weak quarterback class and you forced yourself to take a quarterback. You draft best player available, someone like Abdul Carter or Will Johnson. Make your team better, and then you wait for a quarterback when there are better quarterbacks available. Or you trade for someone like J.J. McCarthy. You probably have to give up 2 2s or a 2 and a 1 next year. Like, you'll have to give up a decent amount of draft capital to get J.J. McCarthy from the Minnesota Vikings. But J.J. McCarthy would be the number one choice in this draft at the quarterback position, easily. So I think that's something that would be extremely worth it as well. I would prefer those two over drafting a quarterback this season in this year's draft class. If we do draft a quarterback, I would prefer Cam Ward over Shedeur Sanders, which our draft position does not help us in that situation, but that's what I would do. Overall, that is my state of the New York Giants right now. I think that the stuff that I spent the first 5 or so minutes talking about with the nepotism and the culture that's been built by ownership deserves to be highlighted again and again and again until they figure it out, or at least make it better and not so blatantly obvious. Thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you later. Peace.